Every time you say Manchester, Chester, or Lancaster, you're speaking the language of a Roman soldier. The word Chester comes from the Latin castra, meaning army camp. It's hiding in plain sight all over England's map. Chester, Lancaster, Manchester, Winchester. The Romans occupied Britain for nearly 400 years, longer than the United States has existed. When they left, they took their language with them. But 6 little words got stuck in the map, and people have been saying them every single day for 15 centuries without knowing it. That is what today's story is about.
Here is something cool that most people don't know about the English language. English has 2 sides to it, like a double-sided coin. On one side, English is a Germanic language. That means it belongs to the same language family as German and Dutch. The everyday words you use all the time, water, father, mother, hand, house, eat, sleep, yes, no, those all come from the Germanic side. They are the bones of the language. But on the other side, when you count up all the words in the English dictionary, about 5 out of every 7 words came from Latin. That's a huge number. Words like education, justice, science, family, all of these came from Latin. So English is Germanic on the inside, but it borrowed a huge pile of Latin words to put on top. How did that happen? The answer is not one big event. It's 4 different events, spread out over more than 1,000 years. Each one added a new layer of Latin words to English. Language experts call these the 4 periods of Latin in English.
Period 1, Roman soldiers arrive in Britain. They stay from 43 AD to 410 AD. That's almost 400 years. Period 2, Christian missionaries come to Britain, starting around 596 AD. They bring Latin with them because Latin is the language of the church. Period 3, in 1066 AD, the Normans conquer England. The Normans speak French, and French is essentially Latin. So when the Normans brought French to England in 1066, they were really bringing a second wave of Latin, just Latin wearing a medieval French costume. Period 4, starting around 1480, during a time called the Renaissance, scholars and scientists go back to Latin and Greek on purpose to create new words. Words like nucleus, radius, and formula come from this time. 4 waves of Latin. Each one different, each one important. But today, we are going to look at the very first one, the Roman soldiers.
Rome invades Britain. The year is 43 AD. The Roman emperor is named Claudius. He orders his army to cross the English Channel and conquer Britain. The Romans do it. They build towns, they build temples, they build roads, straight, flat, beautifully made roads that cross the whole island. They build a huge stone wall called Hadrian's Wall to protect their northern border. They build the city of Londinium, which later becomes London. They stay for almost 400 years. 400 years is a really long time. The United States has only existed for about 250 years. Rome was in Britain for longer than that. So you'd expect them to leave behind lots of words, right? Well, here's the surprising part. After nearly 400 years in Britain, the Romans left behind only 6 Latin words in the English language. 6. That's it. And most of those 6 words aren't even words you use every day. They mostly survive as parts of place names, the names of towns, roads and cities on a map of England. 6 words from 400 years of history. That seems like almost nothing, but each word has a great story. Let's look at them one by one. Word 1. Castra, the army camp. Castra was the Latin word for a Roman army camp or fort. When Roman soldiers set up camp in Britain, they called each camp a castra. Over time, those camp names became town names, and the word castra got worn down into English sounds, becoming Castor, Chester, or Cester at the end of place names. Once you know this, the map of England starts to look like a Roman army map. Chester is just the camp. That's the whole name. Lancaster is the camp on the River Lune. Gloucester is the camp at a place called Glevum. English people say it Gloucester. The C is silent. Exeter is the camp on the River Isker. Manchester is the camp at a hill that kind of looked like a breast. True story. Not the most glamorous origin, but honest. There's also Winchester, Cirencester, Leicester, Colchester, Dorchester, and more.
Word 2. Colonia, the soldiers' retirement town. When Roman soldiers finished serving in the army, after about 25 years, yes, 25 years of service, they got a reward. The government gave them land in a special settlement. These settlements were called colonia. One of these settlements in Britain was called Lindum Colonia. The first part, Lindum, was a Celtic name from the local people. It meant something like the marshy place by the pool. The second part, Colonia, told you it was a veterans' town. Over hundreds of years, people said the name faster and faster. The sounds blended together. Lindum Colonia became Lincolnia, and then it became Lincoln, which is still a city in England today. The word colonia also gave us the English word colony, a place that people settle in, and it gave us the military rank colonel, the officer in charge of a column of soldiers. In English, we say colonel, but spell it with an L. That strange spelling comes from the French and Italian versions of the word, which changed how it looked, but not quite how it sounded.
Word 3. Fossa, the ditch in the road and in your body. Fossa meant a ditch or trench in Latin. It came from the Latin verb fodere, which meant to dig. When Romans built their great roads in Britain, they dug drainage ditches along both sides of the road. One famous Roman road, about 300 kilometres long, running from Exeter all the way up to Lincoln, was known as the Fosse Way. It got its name from those ditches along its sides. You can still drive along stretches of this road today. But here is the most surprising thing about fossa. The word didn't survive in everyday English, but it did survive in one very specific place: medicine. Doctors and scientists kept Latin words alive for centuries, and in anatomy, the study of the human body, fossa is still used today. It means any hollow or dip in a bone or organ. Think of it as a little pit or valley in your body. You have several fossae, that's the plural of fossa, right now. The axillary fossa is your armpit, the hollow under your arm. The popliteal fossa is the soft hollow behind your knee. And one more word came from the same root. When scientists in the 1500s started digging up strange bones and shells from rock, they needed a word for them. They reached back to fodere, to dig, and made the word fossil, which means the thing that was dug up. Word 4. Portus, the harbour. Portus simply meant a harbour or gate in Latin. Ships came and went through a portus. In Britain, this word survived in Porchester, a Roman fort on the southern coast of England. You can actually visit Porchester Castle today. The Roman walls are still standing. They are nearly 1800 years old and still in great shape. The word also shows up in Portsmouth, the famous navy city just nearby. And portus gave English lots of other useful words. Port, a harbour. Portal, a grand entrance or gateway. Import and export, bringing things into a port or sending them out of one port. Transport, carrying things across from one port to another. And here's a cool one: opportunity. This word comes from a Latin phrase, ob portum, which meant the wind blowing toward the harbour. In the days of sailing ships, a fair wind that brought you safely home was a lucky, lucky thing. Over time, ob portum became a word for any lucky chance. An opportunity is, at its root, a good wind blowing you toward home.
Word 5. Strata, the paved road. Strata via was the Latin engineering term for a properly built Roman road. Strata means spread out in layers, because Roman roads were built in careful layers, rubble at the bottom, gravel in the middle, flat stones on top. They were built to last. And they did last. Romans built about 9,000 kilometres of road in Britain. Many modern roads in England still follow the exact same path as Roman roads, because nothing better came along for 1,000 years. Strata became the Old English word strat, and then it became the everyday English word street. Every time you say down the street, you are using a Roman road engineering term. And look at Stratford. This is one of the most common place names in England. The most famous one is Stratford-upon-Avon, the town where William Shakespeare was born. The name means the river crossing, ford, on the paved road, Strat. Shakespeare's hometown is named after a Roman road. Strata also gave English the word stratum, meaning a layer, used in science to talk about layers of rock or layers of the atmosphere. The stratosphere is literally one of Earth's layered levels, and strategy comes from a related Greek word meaning how a general arranges the layers of an army.
Word 6. Vallum, the wall. Vallum, meant a rampart or defensive wall, usually made of piled earth and wooden stakes. Roman soldiers built valla, the plural, whenever they set up camp to protect themselves overnight. And here is a really fun language puzzle. The Latin word starts with V. The English word is wall, with a W. How did that happen? Here's the secret. In ancient Rome, the letter V was actually pronounced like a W. When a Roman soldier said vallum, it came out sounding like wallum. So when Germanic-speaking Britons heard the word, they just wrote it with a W, which was their letter for that sound. The spelling changed, but the sound barely did. This is like if someone told you a new word over the phone and you wrote it down the way it sounded. You'd get the sound right, even if the spelling looked different. The same thing happened with other Latin words. Latin vinum, wine, became Old English ween, which is how we get wine. Latin versus, turned toward, became English word, as in forward, toward, backward. And vallum became wall, the word behind Hadrian's wall.
So, why only 6 words? OK, so we've met all 6. They're interesting. They've got great stories. But the big question is still there. Why only 6? 400 years, thousands of Latin-speaking Romans, and English kept only 6 words from the whole experience? Here's the answer, and it's actually a really important lesson about how language works. When the Romans were in Britain, they mostly lived separately from the local people. Roman soldiers lived inside their castra, their camps and forts. They ate together, trained together, spoke Latin together. The local British Celtic people lived in their own villages and spoke their own language. The two groups met for trade and tax collection, but they didn't really mix in everyday life. They didn't live next door to each other, go to school together, or marry each other very often. So when the Roman legions were called back to Rome in 410 AD, because Rome itself was in danger, the Latin speakers mostly left, and the language went with them. What stayed behind were the names carved into the roads, the forts, the harbours and the walls.
What the Romans left behind. First period Latin is the smallest of the 4 waves of Latin that shaped English. In terms of actual words, it's tiny. The 6 words that stayed are simple. They're not poetic or philosophical. They are a camp, a colony, a ditch, a harbour, a road, a wall. They are the words of builders and soldiers. Next time, period 2.
when Christian missionaries arrived with Bibles and brand new Latin words.